There's a truth almost no one says out loud, yet it quietly affects every American household. The most dangerous thing in today's economy isn't the massive national debt, nor the government's constant overspending. What's far more alarming is the false sense of security spreading everywhere. Many people believe the system will continue functioning as it always has, believe the debt will eventually be repaid, believe what we're seeing now is only temporary turbulence. But history has never supported that belief. And whenever this truth returns, it brings a shock powerful enough to reshape an entire society. Have you ever wondered why every few decades the world experiences another debt shock? Why economies once considered stable suddenly spiral out of control? And why only a small group of ordinary people manage to rise above the chaos while the majority get swept away? These questions aren't meant to scare you. On the contrary, they are the doorway to the most important realization, your position in the cycle that is unfolding. For centuries, history has never repeated itself exactly, but it always moves with a rhythm, and that rhythm begins quietly, with small signs most people ignore. We're witnessing those same signs today. On the surface, everything seems fine. The economy is recovering. Jobs still exist. Technology is booming. The stock market is strong. But beneath that brightness lies another movement: high interest rates, rising consumer debt, increasing living costs, and a widening gap between the rich and the poor. This scene isn't new. It mirrors what happened in ancient Rome, in France before hyperinflation, and Weimar Germany, and in post-war Europe. What did they all share? They all began with the belief that everything is still fine. And they all ended with a sudden change that caught everyone unprepared. The key point is this: most people don't notice these silent shifts. By the time they do, they're already standing in the wrong place. Just like someone who keeps money in cash for years because they fear risk, without realizing the greatest risk is happening right inside their bank balance. Money doesn't disappear. It simply loses purchasing power. And that happens day by day. Yet people blame rising food prices, rising gas prices, rising housing prices, without recognizing that the real change is in the value of their money. Here's an easy image to understand. Imagine you're standing in a large room full of people, music playing loudly. Everyone is talking, laughing, convinced everything is fine. But the floor beneath you is slowly tilting to one side. No one notices because it's tilting very slowly, very gently. And by the time they realize it, many have already slipped without understanding what happened. In economics, that tilt is long-term inflation, unpayable debt, high interest rates, and slowing growth. These things never announce themselves with a loud noise. They simply reshape everyone's assets in silence. But what's remarkable is this: even when the system shifts, not everyone loses. History consistently favors a small group of people who stand in the right position. They're not the ultra-wealthy. They are ordinary individuals who understand the shift sooner and prepare earlier than others. They see the truth. This is not a story of collapse, but a story of transition. When an old formula stops working, a new one emerges. When an old model compresses, a new model creates opportunity. Those who recognize this early enter the next phase with a completely different mindset. The hardest part for anyone watching this video isn't understanding debt or inflation. The hardest part is changing the way you see things. You don't need advanced financial knowledge. You only need to observe one simple reality. In every major transformation, wealth moves from those who believe in absolute stability to those who understand that every system has cycles. If you adopt this mindset, the financial world becomes much clearer. You won't be shocked when prices rise. You won't panic when interest rates shift. You'll start asking, am I standing in the right place? When change comes, will I be reactive or proactive? What's fascinating is that we're living in a time when shifting your financial position is easier than ever before. Technology has opened countless ways to earn small income streams. Real assets now come in many accessible forms. Information is everywhere. 30 years ago, ordinary people couldn't access live economic data, couldn't invest in small slices of assets, and had few ways to protect their wealth outside a bank. Today is different. And the person watching this, are standing at a rare moment. You can actually see the cycle as it's happening. But to take advantage of this opportunity, you need to start with something simple, listening to the full story. Because this story isn't just about dry numbers or complicated charts. It's the bigger picture, how an economy shifts, how a society evolves, and how an ordinary person can move through turmoil with a clear strategy. In the next few minutes, you'll see why certain people consistently survive every crisis, and why you can be among them. No matter your starting point, if you want to continue this journey of analysis and understanding, subscribe to the channel now. It motivates me to create more meaningful, accessible content for the community. And together, we'll go even deeper in the next chapters. There is a race happening right in front of the American people, yet most don't even realize they're participants in it. It isn't loud. It doesn't begin with a starting gun. And there's no scoreboard telling you who is ahead or who is falling behind. That race is called inflation, a term so familiar that everyone thinks they understand it. Yet it silently shapes every decision in life. From daily meals to retirement plans, inflation never enters your life with a knock on the door. It arrives in silence. You don't see it, you don't hear it, but you feel it in every bill, every grocery trip, every tank of gas. And the most striking part is this. You feel it much later than the moment it actually begins. Like a gentle, cool stream flowing slowly around you, seemingly harmless, until the day you realize you've been carried farther downstream than you ever imagined. In the first part, we talked about the slight tilt of the economy, about the false sense of security numbing many people. But here, we look deeper into what makes that tilt dangerous. Inflation doesn't just make things more expensive. It distorts the truth about value. It's not that goods are rising in price. It's that the dollar itself is losing strength. Those are two entirely different stories. Americans usually focus on rising meat prices, rising home prices, rising airfare. Few ask the opposite question. Why can't the dollar hold its power the way it used to? When you ask from that angle, the entire picture changes. Picture yourself saving diligently your whole life, building a stable amount of money in your account. You don't invest in risky assets. You don't bet on the market. You simply keep your money quietly, like millions of other Americans. Each month, you see your account balance unchanged, and you assume you're safe. But what you don't see is that the real value of that money is falling every single day, while the balance itself doesn't warn you. If your money loses 3% of its value each year, that means after 10 years, you've lost nearly 1/3 of your purchasing power without anyone telling you. There's no red alert, no warning sign flashing risk ahead. Everything happens as quietly as breathing. This makes inflation one of the most unique forms of taxation in human history. A tax you aren't asked about. A tax you cannot refuse. A tax you cannot negotiate. It's like a cold wind blowing through your wallet each year. And when you finally notice it, winter has already settled in. But here's the paradox. Inflation isn't the enemy of everyone. For a small group, it becomes an opportunity. And this is what makes this silent race so fascinating. The people who lose the most aren't the poorest. They are the middle class. They are the ones who believe they're doing the right things, saving diligently, avoiding debt, minimizing risk, living steadily. But that very stability, when placed in the context of inflation, becomes a vulnerability. A home purchased with a fixed 30-year mortgage can double in value while the loan amount stays the same. A flexible source of income grows with the market while fixed savings remain frozen. All of this happens with no sound at all. To understand this clearly, imagine a retired man. He worked hard his entire life, saved every dollar he could, hoping for a secure old age without depending on anyone. But as inflation lingers year after year, his carefully saved money no longer buys what it once did. Essential expenses, medicine, insurance, food rise quickly. He isn't wasteful, yet one day he realizes he must calculate every bill. Not because he made bad decisions, but because he is standing on the wrong side of this quiet race. Meanwhile, a young family, neither wealthy nor particularly exceptional, buys a small house with a fixed interest rate or invests in a cash flowing asset. Suddenly, they become the winners. Inflation shrinks their debt over time, while their asset grows in value. They haven't changed much about their lifestyle. But one thing is different. They are standing in the right position, looking more broadly. This is what has created the deep divide in American society over the past few decades. Not because some people are smarter than others, but because some understand the nature of inflation while others don't. Some see inflation as a signal to reposition themselves, and others treat it as an annoyance, hoping it will simply fade away. But inflation doesn't disappear. It merely changes shape. When it no longer shows up in annual price increases, it shows up in service costs. When services stabilize, it shifts into taxes. When taxes are controlled, it shifts into interest rates. Inflation is like water, difficult to stop, always finding a way forward. What should make all of us think more carefully is this: inflation doesn't need to surge dramatically to cause damage. Even slow, steady inflation over just a few years can completely alter the financial position of a household. And this is why so many Americans today, even those with stable incomes, feel life becoming harder. The problem isn't that they earn too little. The problem is that the money they earn means less and less in this reality. The important thing isn't to run faster than others. It's to understand the ground you're running on. A ground that is swelling, stretching, shifting beneath your feet. If you don't realize it, you'll think you're standing still. But in truth, you're drifting backward. The most important point in this race with inflation is this: you cannot outrun it with traditional saving. You can only move ahead by choosing the right assets, the right income streams, and the right strategy. Those who understand this aren't financial experts. They are simply people who observe life carefully and learn from the smallest changes around them. In the next sections, we will go deeper into how certain groups navigate uncertainty by standing in the right position. But the most important thing right now is recognizing this. Inflation itself isn't the frightening enemy. The real danger is standing on the wrong side of it. If you find these insights valuable, keep following along, because the upcoming content will help you understand exactly where you're standing and how to shift that position safely. Throughout every turbulent period in history, one question has always troubled people. Why is it that some individuals who are not wealthy, not powerful, and have no special advantages manage to come through crises almost untouched? Some even rise further after the turmoil, while a majority struggle for years. Where does this difference come from? Are they luckier? Are they chosen? Or is there something happening that most people simply cannot see? When we look back at the financial cycles of the world, the answer turns out to be surprisingly simple. They were standing in the right position. And that position isn't something that falls from the sky. It is the result of calm observation, deliberate choices, and preparation long before things become obvious. Today, life is covered by layers of uncertainty: rising national debt, political division, climbing prices, shaken confidence, and many Americans feel as if they're being pushed into a fast-moving current. The wealth gap isn't just about money anymore. It's about choices, choosing how to face a cycle that is shifting. What's interesting is that this transition doesn't have to be a disaster. For some people, it becomes a period filled with opportunities they never imagined. And to understand that, we need to look more closely at how people behave when the system enters a soft reset. Let's begin with a simple, relatable story, one you might see anywhere around you. There is a young man working an ordinary job, earning a modest income, living frugally. But instead of putting all his leftover money into a savings account, he uses part of it to buy a small asset that can generate cash flow. It might be a small rental unit, a car used for service work, or a small online business. Each month, the income isn't huge, but it's steady. When the cost of living rises, he doesn't feel the pressure as intensely because his income is also rising. While his friends complain that everything is getting too expensive, he feels the burden less. He doesn't become wealthy overnight, but he chooses to stand on the advantageous side of inflation's movement. On the other hand, someone else, also hardworking, also frugal, also trying their best, keeps all their money in a savings account out of fear of risk. When prices rise and purchasing power falls, life starts to feel tighter. Both people are intelligent, decent, and hardworking, yet their outcomes are completely different because of one thing: strategy. And that is what determines who survives during times of disruption. The second point that decides whether someone can stay stable when the system shifts is their relationship with debt. It sounds strange, even against instinct, because most Americans are taught to avoid debt. Pay it off as fast as possible and treat it as a burden. That is true in many situations. But during long periods of inflation, fixed rate debt becomes one of the strongest tools for protecting assets. When money loses value each year, you repay your loan with dollars that are weaker than the dollars you borrowed. That means your debt shrinks over time while the asset you purchased with that debt rises in value. Many American families have unintentionally benefited from this over the past 3 decades. Without realizing they were standing on the winning side of the game, another factor that determines who survives the reset is income. Not how much they earn, but how flexible that income is. The modern world changes too quickly. Industries become unstable. Jobs no longer carry the same guarantees they once did. Those who rely on a single source of income are the first to be hurt when the economy shifts. But those who have even one small additional income stream, even just a few $100s a month, have a vital layer of protection. This doesn't require expertise or large capital. It requires initiative. Flexible income has become part of the survival position that history consistently points to, looking across American society. We're witnessing a moment when the old model is reaching its limits. Living costs are rising faster than wages. Many people no longer believe the system will fix everything for them, but this is also the moment when a new model is forming. Small communities focusing on self-sustaining economics. Young people choosing freelance work instead of fixed jobs. Families beginning to seek real assets instead of holding cash. No one is officially announcing a major transformation, but if you look closely, you'll see the scattered pieces slowly connecting. Throughout history, every reset creates two possible paths. One path leads to loss, because people cling to the old model for too long. The other path leads to renewal because people choose to adapt early. This doesn't depend on nationality, culture, or income. It depends on how willing someone is to change when the first signs appear. Today, Americans are standing at one of those moments. No one knows exactly what will happen. No one can say for sure whether inflation will persist, whether national debt will be restructured, or whether the economy will move into a new cycle. But what can be said with certainty is this: those who prepare early will live better than those who wait. That isn't pessimism, it is a lesson repeated across all civilizations. Look around. And you'll see many people beginning to ask the right questions. Where should I keep my assets? How much cash should I reduce? What additional income should I create? Should I use smart debt to buy real assets? These aren't personal worries, they are signs of a society entering a restructuring phase. Importantly, this process doesn't happen overnight. It moves slowly, then quickly, then suddenly, but it always leaves opportunities for those alert enough to recognize them. The most important part of this chapter isn't describing the turbulence, but helping you recognize that you're not obligated to stand still. You can change your position. You can step out of the passive group and into the proactive group. You don't need to become an investor, read dozens of financial books, or understand complex models. You only need 3 things. Find real assets that fit your lifestyle. Use debt wisely when it benefits you. And build at least one flexible income stream. When the system changes, the only thing you truly control is your position. And sometimes shifting just one small step is enough to place you on the brighter side of an entire long cycle. What matters is that you're still here, still listening, and that means you've already begun to move. If you find this content helpful and want to continue exploring deeper analysis, subscribe to the channel now. Your support gives me the motivation to create more high quality videos in the future.